The Oak and the Dragon, a story with an unexpected ending. The old oak wasn't a magnificent tree. It wasn't extraordinary in any way, really. It was just a tree, as far as Morwenna could see, with low spreading branches super perfect for climbing. Morwenna often came to this wood at the edge of the common. She loved to climb up and sit where there was a fork in the branches. It was peaceful and strong, and she could make up stories and songs where no one could see her, and there was no one to laugh at her. She imagined the tree cast a magic spell to make her invisible, and indeed it was true that when she was very still, people would pass by and not even notice her. One day, when she came to her tree, there were lots of older people there. It looked like they were having a party. Some were in the tree. Some were jumping up and down on the branches and laughing very loudly. Some were peeling the bark off and throwing it on the ground. Others were dropping their drinks cans and empty crisp packets. Morwenna didn't think they meant any harm, but everyone was so much older she felt a bit scared and decided she didn't want to stop. As she kicked through the leaves and listened to them crunching beneath her feet on her way home, she couldn't stop thinking about the tree. On Monday, on her way to school, Morwenna walked past the oak. She imagined that the tree only had magic at weekends and in school holidays, because somehow when she was rushing not to be late, Mum was shouting for her to hurry up. She couldn't find her PE kit, and her little brother just wouldn't sit in his pushchair. It didn't look like a peaceful, safe place at all. It just looked like a tree. At school, Mr. Simone was telling the class about their new topic, habitats. He was explaining that habitats are places where plants and animals live. That sounded like homes to Morwenna. She didn't understand why teachers always had to go and complicate things. Mr. Simone was saying that the class would visit different habitats, a pond, an allotment, the town centre, and a woodland. The class was going to visit her oak tree. Morwenna didn't know what could possibly live in her oak tree, apart from a few birds and Steve the squirrel, but she was excited to be able to visit the tree on a school day and made sure Mum signed her consent form as soon as she got home. Morwenna put it safely in her book bag to take back to school the next day and was the first to hand it in. She would have to wait for 2 whole weeks before the outing. Finally, it was the last sleep before the trip. Morwenna got everything ready before she went to bed so she wouldn't be late for school in the morning. When the class arrived at the tree, Mr. Simone let everyone climb onto its branches, which was very exciting. Some were jumping up and down on the bouncy branches. Some were shouting, and a few were peeling the bark away to feel the squashy, spongy stuff underneath. When Eleanor, the person who looked after the trees, arrived to talk to the class, everyone had to climb down and listen. Here comes the boring bit, thought Morwenna, and started scuffling her feet. Hi everyone, said Eleanor. It looks like you were all having a great time in our oak tree. Before I tell you about some of the creatures that need oak trees, I'd like to tell you a story about this oak tree and the dragon that looks after it. Can you see the dragon? Here we go. Of course there's no dragon, thought Morwenna, and rolled her eyes. A long time ago, right where you're standing now, a great storm started in the afternoon, just when school was letting out. The rain fell so hard that it stung your cheeks and hurt the top of your head. As evening came, rain kept coming and the wind got even more ferocious. If you look around, every one of these trees was creaking and swaying and being pushed and pulled by the force of the wind. Morwenna and the rest of the class stopped to look around them. It was true. Morwenna had never even noticed before, but her tree didn't stand alone. There were lots of other trees standing, as well as a huge fallen tree that looked like it had been ripped right up out of the ground. She stared in amazement. It looked just like a gigantic dragon. She started to listen to Eleanor's story. It was during the darkest, stormiest part of the night that there was the most enormous, deafening crash that shook the earth. It was the exact moment that a mother dragon, babies on her back, was flying overhead trying to get home, but she had become lost in the storm. When she heard the crash and felt the vibration even from up above, the mother dragon thought one of her young had fallen from her back. Without a second thought, even though she couldn't see a thing, she swooped to this very spot, scooped up her baby, finally made her way home, and put everyone to bed. In the morning, when she went to check on the small dragons, she realized that the enormous crash she had heard was not one of the babies falling from her back, but the sound of the roots of a strong oak being ripped from the ground by the force of the storm and plummeting down. Because the mother dragon knew that it is always best to leave the woodland as you find it, she took the strong oak back and dropped it where she had found it on that stormy night. Now, the fallen oak, of course, realized that it wasn't really a dragon, but it had spent time with the dragons and saw how kind and respectful they were to the older dragons in their den. The fallen oak looked over at the old and damaged oak tree that was still standing, the oldest in this woodland. Morwenna didn't know that. The one that was used by so many for climbing, and by some who even peeled away its precious protective bark and dropped litter. The dragon oak thought about how it could help and decided to encourage children and everyone to climb on its own strong back and not on the poor old oak that was so damaged and weak. And that is why, to this very day, the fallen oak spreads its wings and has the most wonderful place for children to sit on its back and imagine all the places they can go. Eleanor finished her story and looked around at the group, who had all gone very quiet. Suddenly someone said, "If I had heard that story before, I never would have climbed up in the poor old oak." This made Eleanor smile. "That is why I wrote this story. We want everyone to have the best time when they are out enjoying nature, but to also stop to think if what they are doing might cause any harm, or mean that people in the future may not be able to enjoy the same things." Morwenna couldn't stop thinking about the story, her tree, and everything Eleanor had said. The ending of this story is up to you. Did Morwenna continue to spend quiet time in her tree, or did she decide not to? What would you do? Write your own ending. Create a drawing or a poem and send it to the keeper at finderskeepers@barnescommon.org.uk. She would love to hear from you and add your endings to our Cornucopia Portal for all to see. Remember, there are no right or wrong endings, just a story.